So the UK is now set to be the first country to allow 3-person IVF. The procedure will only be allowed in cases where the embryo is at risk for mitochondrial diseases. So in a free vote in the Commons, 382 members of British Parliament were in favor and 128 against the technique that stops genetic diseases being passed from mother to child. So for a little background here, defective mitochondria are passed down from only the mother. They can lead to brain damage, muscle wasting, heart failure, and blindness. The technique uses a modified version of IVF to combine the DNA of the two parents with the healthy mitochondria of a donor woman. It results in babies with 0.1% of their DNA from the second woman, and is a permanent change that would be passed down through the generations. So for clarification here, it's not really a 3-person IVF, but rather 2.001-person IVF.
I'm not a scientist here, so just to clarify this for me real quick. Aren't mitochondria, isn't that how they decide who has the stuff in the blood to become a Jedi?
That's close, yes.
What's that again?
Midichlorians.
Ah, okay, all right.
We're not supposed to use that word in this place. George Lucas.
Mitochondria is within every cell in the body, and it converts food to usable energy.
Yeah, and allows you to choke people from across the room.
Yeah, not the Jedi thing.
So I'm worried about this if it actually leads to people killing off entire populations of Coruscant. I don't think that that's a good thing. This is interesting for a lot of different reasons.
Right.
Now, base level, I am worried that this is one of the sort of stories that most outlets reporting this are going to do a very bad job, either because of their own reporting or also because what most people are like, in actually taking from this what they should. I think Hannah has already done a far better job than most of the articles I've read about what this is actually about. If you just look at the headlines, almost every outlet is making this out to be, they're now allowing 3 people to have a kid together. It takes so long to even know that they're talking about mitochondrial disease and things like that. Now, there could be other consequences down the line, but this is very specific to fixing this medical problem.
Right, and some of the debate kind of about this is going into like the whole genetic modification thing and whether there should be designer babies and stuff. So for clarification, it's not, you don't change anything like aesthetically or about the intelligence. It's only in cases where they know that the embryo would be able to develop a mitochondrial disease, and thus they would do it. And it would only affect, like I think they said, 150 children a year.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I guess it could lead to some of the things that would lead to the designer babies at some point, right? So some of the science could lead to that, and then there's all kinds of ethical things that are that you could debate about that. But as far as this, just making sure that 2 people can have a healthy baby by getting a 3rd person involved, I see absolutely no problem with it. But unfortunately, the headlines of all the stories are going to make it sound completely insane, like people are having threesomes to have babies.
Fox is already freaking out about the LGBT community.
Especially since 6,500 kids in the UK are born every single day with mitochondrial disease. It seems like a no-brainer to me that they would allow it.
Yeah, and so that's why when you actually read what they're now allowing, it seems odd that they have to have a big debate that 128 people are going to be against. I mean, look, the UK has their right-wing element. They even have their sort of Christian element. It's really nothing in comparison to what we have to deal with here in the US, where this sort of thing almost certainly wouldn't pass, even though it seems completely objectionable when you know the details of it. But why does this have to have a big debate? I mean, I understand the worries about a slippery slope, although honestly I have to think like...
Everything's a slippery slope. Though.
Everything
in science ever is a slippery slope.
That's all it is, yes. They should really put down carpeting. But let's say that the DNA, that the 0.1% wasn't just contained within the mitochondria, and this was a way for people to actually have 3 people, have their DNA in a child, or perhaps a couple of 2 women who wanted to have both their DNA inside. If they just wanted to use it for that, and there weren't long-term health consequences, which we're not seeing any long-term health consequences talked about here, is that such a bad thing? I mean, why should that have anything to do with anyone other than the 3 people involved in it?
Yeah, I mean, science scares people at the end of the day. That's really all this is about. They just need to go ahead and do it, and people will realize it's like everything else with science. It's scary at the beginning, and then generally you realize that it's going to work.
Right. So the bill still has to go through their House of Lords, but if they think if everything kind of goes accordingly, the first baby that was from these 3 parents, the 3 donors, should be born next year, which is pretty crazy.